Welcome, everyone, to Well-Versed Words with Kim Port-Parsons. I'm so thrilled to have you read with us today. Kim grew up near Baltimore, Maryland, and earned her degrees there, and then worked in education for 30 years. She now lives next door to Shenandoah National Park, writes, gardens, walks, and volunteers for Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. And you were just telling me what a fantastic reading you had today. Her poems have been widely published, including in Vox Populi, Poetry Ireland Review, and Live Encounters. And she has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. Her first collection, The Mayapple Forest, from Terrapin Books in 2022, was a finalist for the North American Book Award and sponsored by the Poetry Society of Virginia. And I will let her tell you more about her work and her poetry. But at this moment, let's give a very, very warm welcome to poet Kim Port-Parsons.
Hey, Kim.
Don't forget to mute yourselves if you are not the poet speaking.
Oh, thank you so much, Alison, and everyone for coming out today. It's, I was asked by Alison, would you like me to just call the reading after, the title of your first book, The Mayapple Forest? And as much as I love it, I feel like that's just part of my story now as I'm moved on and am working on a second book. And I thought, what's really happening for me right now is the world is so full of fraught events and trends and bad actors and negative forces, really, that I find myself leaning into poetic spaces for solace. And those spaces can take lots of different forms. They may be the writing of a poem. They may be the reading of a book of poetry. They may be like this, a gathering of listening and sharing in poetic community. And one of the poets who read with us today on Cultivating Voices, live poetry, my mainstay group, which I participate in, and later on when we have question and answers, I'll even write that name out in the chat for those of you who've never heard of it. One of the poets, Julie Marie Wade, said in one of her poems, "Everything a possible poem." And I said, yes, any space. Thinking of this topic for today, any space can be a poetic space if we approach it that way. So I've picked out a variety of things to read with you today. I hope you enjoy them. Some of them are brand new. Some of them are published, but not in my first book. Some of them are in my first book. And I thought I'd begin with this one, even though we're now fully in spring emergence. I wrote a poem that takes place in winter, in which I go out on a walk in the winter world, and I'm seeking that solace, that peace. And we think often of winter as bare and empty, but look closer. Wintering. Slim pockets of pine cone. Leaf buds, closed door. Floating boat of twigs in a hedgerow net. Gall on goldenrod. Tunnel of grass. Silken chamber of milkweed pod. Burrow at root's turn. Oak barks byways. Gurgling kettle of stream. Each moment inside a bubble's rise. Signpost of trout leaning upstream, worn saddle of rock, window of sunlight, shallow where doe slept, lichens ruffled blanket. Let me stay here a while in the lee of the poem. And you know, sometime just going into a poem, calming yourself, giving that attention is like being cradled, in a safe space. And and sometimes the poem is a way to go into a very dark and difficult place, but in doing so, it helps you as the reader or you as the writer to grapple with that. And so grief is a theme that runs in and out of the Mayapple Forest. This particular poem, Upstream, is a reflection on the way I saw my mother coping with my father's passing. He passed very suddenly many years before before she did, very suddenly from a heart attack when he was on a fishing trip. Very unexpected. Upstream. My father died suddenly. My mother left to mourn. 300 miles from home, he turned down his bed. Friends came for coffee, found him on the floor. They let my uncle know. Then we knocked on her door. I hope his mind was on the river, where he fished the evening hatch, steps from the old trailer under tall pitch pines. The water so clear there, he could count the stones. The bourbon brown and sweet there after casting in the dusk. I hope the river's murmur was louder than the pounding. A quick death's a blessing to the one who dies. He washed up from supper, then pulled back the covers, then a sharp pain, a dizzy moment, a door closing, and lights out. But a curse for the one who waits for the long box and lays it in the ground, who opens the window of each empty day and sets a table for one each night, who chews mouthfuls of dust and listens on repeat to her own lungs' dirge. Joy is short. The O a fish makes as it leaps for the fly. The last minute of the 56 and a half years of loving a living man. But grief is long, a strong current from which you never rise, but needs must swim against for the rest of your days. And, you go into the pain, but somehow there's a solace in the going in the writing about it, in the working through it in the poem. And um, when we as people, connect with another person's poem about grieving, it speaks, it connects to our own heart's core. Um, so, solace for me doesn't mean happiness. It's, and poetry certainly isn't all about that, but many faceted. And one of the places that I think I tend to go, and many of us do, is into memory and explore memory in my poetry and explore other arts as well. So I recently had this poem published in Live Encounters, which is a wonderful online poetic space. if you have not visited it. And I highly recommend it, Live Encounters. And this poem is called Companion, and it's about my love affair with Joni Mitchell my most of my life, which I think many people appreciate. And music is another place of solace for many of us. It has a little epigraph. Pardon me, I'm going to sing a little bit in this poem. I am on a lonely road and I am traveling, traveling, traveling. From Joni Mitchell's All I Want. This is my epigraph, and the poem is called Companion. My face is a fading sign in the funhouse mirror of the iPad screen. I'm watching Joni while chopping onions for the frying pan. Enough for two these days. She's enthroned in a gilded chair at Newport, adored and loving it. Everything comes and goes. She leans in and eases out a deeper version of herself. Famous backup singers grin and the audience sings along, marked by lovers and styles of clothes. Once I was a teenager stretched out on a flowered bedspread, big headphones turned up high, cloudy dreams wavering like the needle on vinyl, sinuous verses sparking my skin, a long dive down. Later, that silky, sliding voice poured sunshine into my dorm, filled it with butterscotch, warm as the sweet fire of yearning the night before. Chords curving, smoke signaling my brain. I'm sorry, smoke signaling poems I longed to loop from my own tongue to honey the world like Joni. How could I not rewind and play all I really, really want over and over again? Thrumming loud in my Walkman, scuffed boots knocking on the sidewalk, far from home. Careful steps over love's cracks in my 30s, picking myself up, telling myself, I can choose my life. I can make the life I want, free myself from fear of the empty bed, sleep in my own arms, fly anywhere in my dreams. Joni carries me down the river, sings it fine and dark, high and deep. The liquid of her music buoys me, washes me, and I drift along. I did find someone loving and kind. If I could, I'd turn and push my way back to that tender, searching self. Take her hand. Tell her to keep on singing. Tell her to keep one eye on the rear view mirror. Watch how the lonesome falls further behind. I'm sure there are some Joni fans out there besides me. Um, Conjuring my college dorm, I thought I'd read another poem that came out, and that's in Live Encounters. That's just sort of a much lighter place, lighter topic. Um, you know, that's good therapy too. I mean, poetry is therapy, but seeking solace in good memories and laughing at ourselves. So this poem is called Skipping Women in History, sophomore year. And formally going into a formal exercise in a poem is a kind of solace from my brain and the way my brain works. So I set myself a challenge in this poem to do it all in one sentence grammatically and keep the sentence rolling all the way until the till the end, to the period. Skipping women in history, sophomore year. Climbing over the radiator, maneuvering out the window, the two panes louvered wide open, a beckoning gateway, the long dark hall stretching behind like a guilty conscience. The first really warm spring light, seductive as an imagined kiss. The bright pebbled tarmac roof, where some women have already set up camp, stretched out on comforters, doubled up blankets, and even a dime store pool float. And by noon, the roof is full. More classroom chairs are empty, and there's talk of getting some lemon juice from the cafeteria to work on highlights, and someone passes around her baby oil, and all the tender young skin glistens, and the legendary feminist history professor and her insights into suffrage are forgotten, and we are liberated by our recklessness, but we are captives of our desire to be blonde and bronzed and luscious and loved. um, you know, Solace comes in many forms, and forgiveness is an important one. And, sometimes when I'm working on poems, I'm trying to work my way. I know this sounds strange, but I'm sort of trying to work my way into learning how to be a better human. I'm struggling with that. And so obviously, sometimes we struggle to forgive in our lives, to make peace. And so this poem, also from the book, the first book, The Mayapple Forest, is called A Blessing. And I see my dear friend Sandy arrived and is here. Sandy and I both wrote a poem inspired by this moonflower that I'm describing in this poem that opened on my porch in the 1990s in Lincoln, Nebraska, when we were graduate students together at the University of Nebraska. And she went away with that image of that moonflower in her head and wrote a poem that has nothing to do with my poem. And this image stuck with me and stuck with me, and I worked for years on writing this poem of forgiveness. It's called A Blessing. Let me take a little sip of water. If you don't know, moonflowers grow on a vine. They're pearly white, glowing white. They open as the sun goes down very slowly. You can literally watch them like the camera's been slowed down. There they go. A blessing. You sit on your front porch some evening, alone or holding the hand of someone you love, or not holding it, nor your breath, nor your stiff neck of work. Your mind slowly opens with the drifting down of dusk. Little twitches of the calendar pass through your arms and legs. Let them. They can't dance you back into dailiness. Even the flashes of pain once inflicted, you brush off as you do the mosquitoes. These steal small portions of your blood, don't give them more. And while you wander over yourself and settle into the shadows, The moonflower on the vine, twining up the porch rail, slowly opens, so slowly you don't turn your head. You do not drag the heavy tail of him behind you anymore. You have lifted him in your arms and turned him over and known his human shape once again. When you set him down, he walked away. Turn now. Feel some presence at your back. See the full circle of the blossom. And though momentary, how it glows, how its purity washes over you. Its scent, a sacred, open space. The opening of the heart with forgiveness, right? Makes space for healing. Um, I hope I'm doing okay with time, Alison. Yeah? Do I have time for two more? Yeah? Okay.
Yes, and of course, what's going to happen is that you're going to be um, asked to read more than two because people are loving your beautiful way of sharing these poems. As my mother would say, you're a brilliant elocutionist.
Oh, well, thank you. So, this space that we're creating right now, this poetic space, which you so kindly and warmly and generously are holding for us, Alison, this is a place of solace for me. When I participate in reading groups, such as Cultivating Voices Live Poetry, such as this one, such as my dear and wonderful Irish group, Lime Square Poets, um, so many Fixed and Free in New Mexico, and so many groups, so many groups. I can't list them all here. Those are places of solace. I feel they are sacred spaces of human connection. And when I gave Alison this phrase in an email when we were talking about this program, it began to swirl around in my brain, and I wrote a poem for the occasion called The Solace of Poetic Spaces. And I think the origin of the phrase is Greta Ehrlich's amazing book, The Solace of Open Spaces, which you can see from my previous writing. That idea of an open space, creating space, is very important to me. So I pulled a quote as an epigraph from that magnificent book, The Solace of Open Spaces by Greta Ehrlich. Quote, days unfold, bathed in their own music. And I'm thinking specifically now about the way day after day I have felt just this barrage of terrible news. And I ask my husband sometimes when we take walks together as a kind of therapy of going into a space of solace, I'll say, why is there so much hate in the world? Why? The solace of poetic spaces. When grief's undertow persists, rises and stretches, fills every crevice with lethargy and numbs the limbs. Seek the solace of poetic spaces. Long needed rain seeps down to the roots. Conjure the ghostly grace of remembered faces. The shadow of long lost hands across the palm. Recall the catch breath of beloved places, pillows of moss under tired feet on a forgotten path, the relief of rediscovered silence. In a softening of circled voices, humble offerings like coins tossed in a fountain, lean in. Here, a strain of melancholy, a dirge for long lost choices. There, a strand of hoped for consolation. And then, a sudden shower of sounds, cross hatching the air, refreshing as a cool palm on a fevered brow. Listen to the tenderness of each line's paces. Such offerings are chanted psalms, filling the cathedral of the body, grounding the heart's wires to stone shore earth and to each other. So may it be. You know, poetry is medicine for the soul, I think. And I thank you for sharing this space with me today, and may we all, go forth and do what we can. Uh, I say it a lot, and it's a cliche, but peace, love, and poetry. This is what we need. So, this poem that I had planned to be the last poem, but if you have one, if you want me to do an encore, I have one more that might fit as an ender. The title is All But Lost, hyphenated, All But Lost. Like we're hanging on that precipice, all but lost. I think it speaks for itself. It's a call for peace. Some clear December morning, when the impossible aroma of hope wakens your senses, pause a moment. In other fields, dusty hands harvest the ripened grain while fancy bombs steer themselves toward nearby towns. On rubbled streets, across mysterious borders, posters of missing children rattle in a gray and bitter wind. How can there be anything but bafflement at this wilderness we wander? The moon sets itself gently down into the crooked bowl of the mountain's rocky arms, and a kinship for all who have gone before momentarily fills your chest. Then a keening grows in your throat, presses its swelling note against the next breath. Peace is an all but lost seed in need of fertile ground and rain, or a fragile heirloom wrapped in yellow paper. Muster what you can. Brace against that long forgotten door, stubborn with lack of use and rust, and push. Push. So, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for being here.
You really did create a very sacred space with your words. I'm so grateful. I know that all of us are. You brought me to tears multiple times. I luckily have waterproof mascara. um, so I have a request. just because there is a poem out of this collection that really moved me, and it's not one of the ones you've read. So I'm just wondering if I can entice you to
Sure.
read it. It's the poem on page 80 of your collection called Ephemera.
Oh, sure. Sure.
It's
So
love.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
I want to tell a little story about what this poem came to mean to me. Um, I'm very interested in the idea that everything all the time is both permanent and temporary. This very, it is always now. Now is always gone. We're in the next now. We carry all of our nows with us at all times. It's a paradox. And out of that paradox comes a lot of writing for me. And it enters into a lot of the poems that I write. That here, gone. So I wrote this poem, and it it came lately to the collection. The collection had already been accepted. It was almost finished, and there was some jostling around of pages, and my editor asked me if I had another page, and I said, well, actually, I've just finished one, and I think it would suit itself well near the end of the book. And she agreed, and so it came in. And not maybe a year later, a very dear friend, a neighbor, passed away from cancer. And her husband asked me to read at the gathering after her memorial service. She and I shared a love for bird watching in our neighborhood. We both kept feeders, and one day when in her last months she was getting weaker, she called me, Kim, do you have any seed? I'm out of seed, and the rose-breasted grosbeak is here, and it's only going to be here for a day, and I'm out of seed. And I said, yes, I've got you covered. Come and get it. And I went out to meet her. She rushed over. We were both in our pajamas. And I carried out seed and we filled her bucket. And I said, I'm going to have to look for mine now. If he's at your feeder, he's going to come to my feeder too. Or his companions, as they travel in their migration. And it's like such a sudden gift, here and then gone. And I thought, well, I've got to tell that story and read this poem from my friend who always was willing to stop and look and embrace that beauty. Ephemera. Red dawn on the mountain, light filtering bare trees, bloodroot, hepatica, trout lily, fungal blooms waking the ants, match flames of spring. Bees still drowsy with cold, taking first sips. Waning moon crossing a window, a kiss before sleep. Sleep itself, or any kiss, or any night, or the mystic lantern of a dream glowing from core to fingertips. Words blading a page, swirling mayflies, a feathery whisper, passing as the heron over the meadow to the pond, wing beats slowing, shifting, lifting, marking a life. I am saying nothing as tenderly as I can. A lily opening on any pond, any lily, a pulse, a pulsar, starlight pouring millennia at a glance, all this rising and falling, all this tunneling the anthills of perception, all of this. sweet sips of here, now, look, this, yes, then gone. And here we are, right? Here, then gone. Thanks for asking for that. I'm it felt like a gift when I wrote that poem. You know, sometimes it's like that the poem finds you and just uses you as a little channel to come out, you know.
Absolutely. Um,
Thank you again so much, everyone. Thank you.
what a special space. I hate to even break into it with my own voice, but I would love to welcome you to ask questions or make comments at this time. And you're welcome to raise a hand um, physically like this, and I'll try to notice. Not everybody's on camera, or you can raise a hand like that on your screen, which is under reactions. For those of you who, it took me a while to figure this out. That's why I'm saying it. And I know my mother is here who's 86. So if you click on reactions and you click on raise hand, then your hand will go up. But I wanted to start out by um, asking the first question just because I think it's helpful. Most of us are poets who are kind of tend to be toward the introverted end of the spectrum. Sometimes it's hard to be the first person to ask. So I had a question about the process for you. I'm always interested in hearing from poets the process of refining a poem. And one of the things you said about the poem with the moonflower was that it took you over a year for it to bloom into its form that you shared with us today. So I was wondering if
Uh,
perhaps you can tell us a little bit about your process. I'm always really interested as a poet myself in the process of revision, and I really think of it as revisioning, right? You know,
mhm.
having that vision come back to you again and having it sort of play in front of you, not just in front of your eyes, but in front of your deeper self. And
Mhm.
asking yourself, is this the manifestation? Is it truly saying the thing that I hoped to say? So I just am wondering if you could speak to that in any way that you'd like to.
Well, that particular poem took a long time to write the first year, and then I set it down and came back to it years later and revised it again. And I would say that in the case of that poem, it was a matter of what is the poem trying to teach me rather than what am I trying to learn how to say.
Mm,
It's like what is the act of working on this poem? How can I open up to what its gift will be, its insight will be, its music will be, whatever that particular poem is. You know, some are more musical than others, some are more emotional than others, some are shorter, some are longer. Blah, blah, blah. And so, in contrast, the last poem that I just read came very quickly and I revised it very little. It almost is like it just formed and came out in a quick succession. And it's a mystery to me how that happens. But I do know in the case of some poems, I have to get up and walk away and come back. I have to try to approach the subject matter from lots of different angles and discover how to enter it because it's really big subject matter for me. And there's a poem I'm working on right now that I think is going to end up being kind of a long and important poem for me. And the title poem in this book, The Mayapple Forest, was a long and important poem for me. And it took many, many, many sessions of me sitting down and attempting to go into the subject matter because it was wrenchingly difficult subject matter for me. It was hard to approach, and I would have grace with myself and say, that's enough for today. I'm going to set this aside, not even look at it, and come back and approach it with fresh, open minded, and open hearted energy and see where the next session will take me. And there is a moment for me in the writing process to coin. I think it was Sandy who taught me this quote from, I think it was Lucy Brock Boydo, that you, a poem, a really great poem will feel like it clicks shut, like it, like the box, like the lid of the box clicks shut when it's complete and when it's working. And there, it's such a great phrase because for you as a writer grappling with the editing, maybe the rearranging or the rewording or the cutting or whatever it is that you're doing with that particular revision process, looking and listening, watching yourself for that moment when it clicks shut, when it feels complete. Um, I don't know if that was even a coherent answer, but that's what came to mind
Absolutely
with your question.
coherent. I mean, and also very poetic. And I hadn't heard that phrase before, and it is absolutely true. It sort of reminds me of trying to get the focus on a camera right. And
Mhm.
when you finally get things come into focus, and all of a sudden it's crystalline and it feels real, and then you've got that picture. And that's the
Mhm.
way I always thought about it. But I love the idea of the
Mhm.
box with the click, because that to
Yeah.
me is very
Mhm.
similar kind of feeling. Rosemary, go ahead.
I just wanted to, I don't even have a real question. I just wanted to tell you that today I listened to a true poet,
Oh,
and
Rosemary.
I was just so moved. I still have difficulty talking. And what you've done to me, for me today, is uh, you have danced in the woods while the rest is burning. So instead of writing political poems and adding to the hatred and adding to the fear and making you feel even worse, you've actually opened the forest glen to the fairies and taken us there and make us forget for a while, and not quite forget, because you're not saying that it's not burning. What you're saying is, while the rest is burning, take this now we have and make the best of it and dance while you can. And this dance, this wonderful word dance, the beautiful lines, wonderful images. I just wanted to thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I felt that way today listening to the reading I listened to earlier today with amazing poets. And this is what I mean by art, music, poetry, dance, the natural world, these sources of incredible solace. We need them so much. We need them so much. And we need to share them and amplify them in any way that we can, even if it's just a friend passing on something to another friend in a private way, quiet, gentle, private way. Or if you can be that amazing person who is out there leading, you know, boldly leading. Um, I have found it really hard to write this past year.
Yeah.
Beginning last May, I had a terrible dread that fell over me. And I'm just beginning to be able to open fully and in a sustained way to the solace of writing poetry, which is another poetic space, you know, as the writing. But
Mhm.
I've learned, you know, that if you are a writer or you're a creator of music or you're a painter, whatever your form of expression or creative outlet, cook, any way you can break through the negativity and touch that source of love and life. Share it. Partake of it. It is a form of resistance. And I think the antidote to all that we see is connection, is heart connection. And poetry is certainly one very powerful way to cultivate that. Your own heart and in community like this. So, Rosemary, you really very moved to hear you say that. I'm glad that.
But for me, it was even more important because I'm a German-born Brit. I live in Lima, Peru, because I married one. But I was born in 1938. So even though I was a child, I lived through something that now traumatizes me again. And your poetry today lifted me a little bit out of this.
So very glad I could do that. Thank you for sharing that.
We do have time for some more questions and comments. If you would like to put things in the chat. Also, I've been checking the chat every so often, and Kim, you will love reading everything that is in the chat. There are some beautiful expressions of gratitude and just poetic writings in the chat in response to your work.
Thank you all for that.
And
I see, such powerful voices here, people who have lifted me up and given me the experience that Rosemary described. Regina is here, and Mary Louise, and Margarita, and Linda Crawford, and Sandy, I mentioned, we go way back as poetry students together, and friends and sisters and beloveds who have come out today. Connection. So important.
Sandy, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, Alison, I don't know that I've been in a room with you, but I love your work, and I'm thrilled to be in your presence, and I suspect that Rosemary may be a relation of you. That may be the relation. I don't know. But having Rosemary here, I was just so moved by what I just watched, because I get to be in these squares also as the host of Cultivating Voices, with Kim, and to be moved, I seek being moved by poetry too, and the reading was moving, but the response, your response, Rosemary, was, I mean, as a poet myself, and knowing Kim, I can appreciate how Kim will be very, very moved by what you shared. And I think any poet would want to feel that they were able to move someone as deeply as you were, especially around something like historical trauma, which is incredible to it's incredible for me to be able to witness the moment that I just witnessed transpire. And I witness a lot of moments around poetry. And this is one that just leapt right to the top of the ladders that I have, or whatever staircases. My question for Kim, and I get to talk to Kim all the time, but I only have just heard that poem, The Solace of Poetic Spaces, for the first time.
Yeah, it's the first time it's fresh off the pencil.
Fresh off. And yeah, so I'm struck by the newness of it, and and I get to be in so many poetic spaces with you. But the way that you articulated the significance of those spaces just also really went inside for me, really went inside. And now I'm trying to like have it like, process it and share it back. It 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 made me think somewhat also of, well, it's funny that you mentioned Lucy Brock Broido, of course, but the poet that I started to think of as that poem was working itself through, and I'm curious if it's in form because of course I heard the repetition, or I heard the rhyme scheme of it. I'm really curious about that. I loved it. It really helped me process the poem. But the poem it made me think about was Emily Dickinson's poem. I think it's number 341, if we're counting. Um, After great pain, a formal feeling comes.
Mm.
Ooh, so even bringing up that poem sends chills up and down my back. So
And
thank you for
yeah,
even
yeah.
connecting me. You know, where in the world did that come from? I don't know. It's not really a strict form, but what I found myself doing when I was writing that was writing out phrases that felt like echoes of the title phrase. And that just playing with language that way is a tremendous joy to me. And it's something I will do just walking. I will do it in my head. It's, you know how and sometimes we watch as people listen to spiritual music and they rock themselves. Um, or God forbid, you see someone keening and they're grieving and the rocking that happens. And sometimes working on a poem, playing with language that way, going back over and over something in different iterations is like that for me. It is, that is not to say that I don't try at some point in the work to step back and look at it artistically and think about it and edit it and so on. But in the process of getting it out, sometimes writing is like that for me. So phrases, I was like, open this door and see what phrases sound like echoes of each other. The solace of poetic spaces, the ghostly grace of remembered faces,
Yeah.
the catch breath of beloved places, the relief of rediscovered silence. And then some of those sounds started morphing into other configurations, softening of circled voices, people in a group, um, dirge for long lost choices. So these are all in the poem, the way it's laid out on the page, and it's in triplets. The rhymes are not always at the end of lines. There's sometimes slant rhymes. There's sometimes looping back to an earlier word. Um, and that's how I got into writing the poem. And then I came back and started looking at these phrases that seemed to be rising up for me. And pretty quickly, I was able to then write it out in more complete thoughts, to create the chain of thoughts that worked for me. But I was trying to teach myself about how much I need when I am in that deep despair to go to the reading or to go to the book and open it. Such offerings are chanted psalms. They're prayers. You know, the epigraph in the book in the first collection is from Joy Harjo's poem, Eagle Poem.
Mm, mm.
To pray, you open your whole self to sky, to earth, to sun, to moon, to one whole voice that is you, Joy Harjo. And poetry is a kind of prayer, or can be. And so I think this poem is a kind of prayer, you know, for the healing of coming together and sharing poetry and connecting heart to heart.
If I can follow up, if that's okay, Alison, briefly, if that's all right. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. You know, as you were then rephrasing the phrases, the next poem that started to come up for me was Elizabeth Bishop's One Art.
Which
Mm.
is, yeah, that's a
So,
great poem of repetition,
so,
right? You
so,
know?
you know, I was like, oh, is it a villanelle? Right? Like, I mean, I think I probably felt that echo when I was hearing it, but I didn't think of it as One Art. But this time I was like, now it's One Art. And Kim, you know, it goes sort of without saying that those two poems, like I hold those two poems up as, you know, probably like two of the most of them. There's many exquisite poems, but you know, like there is a cream, and that puts this with the cream, you know, like
Oh, Sandy,
and
that's very kind.
but the other thing is
Oops, you went muted.
when I was hearing it also, and I felt this as I was hearing you read, and I've heard you read many, many times with, you know, great reverence and gratitude, as many people in the room have. But there's a way that you today, you do it typically, but today there was a way that I felt like I was being taken into kind of a trance state with you. And from that trance state, I really felt I was able to break through to be more awake with being in what was my trance state, which is kind of like the cousin to here and gone a little bit. Um, or it feels like that.
Well,
So thank you.
welcome. Thank you.
Poets really are the midwives of the spirit, aren't they?
Oh, Midwives of the Spirit.
Mm.
That's an anthology that you need to edit, Alison.
Maybe someday. I'm
Midwives of
just
the Spirit.
I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude for being able to provide this space for you today, Kim. What a gift you've given all of us. And I want to let you all know that Rosemary is going to be our featured poet next month. Please come back and hear her read her beautiful work. She's as you can tell, she's incredibly sensitive, wonderful poet, wonderful human being. And it's the second, I believe it's May 11th, the second Sunday in May, same time, 5:30 Eastern. And I hope you'll join us for that. But I just want to say, Kim, what an incredible privilege and joy it was to have you read. Thank you so much for the gift of your reading. I really felt I felt like I'd been in a religious space. So so I totally echo what Sandy said. Um, and I just want to thank all of the people who are here don't have their cameras on. Thanks for spending time with us. I see you in my mind if I don't see you on the screen. There was a question about the mailing list. I actually have a Facebook page called Well Versed Words, And I usually put all the information about every month's reading on that page. It's easy to find. It's a public page, so you can get on it. And if you like it, you will get reminders about upcoming readings. I just started putting the videos of the readings on that page. So if you missed one and you want to go back and hear Frank Paino read, for example, or any of my other fantastic guests, that they are on there. So yeah, Kim, do you have any last words? Do you want to share anything about where we can buy your book, perhaps? I did put your website down in the chat.
Just briefly before Kim speaks, because
Yes.
Kim, for years, once the pandemic started, I had been going to Cultivating Voices live poetry, and Kim just does all of the work with Sandy, does all of the work. And only on the rarest of occasions have I heard her read anything. So when I saw this, there was no way I was going to pass up this opportunity to hear you read. So thank you very much. It's just so gentle, self-effacing, never attempts to read all these years, finally. So thank you. I really, really appreciated this. It's soothing. So thank you.
I just have one more thing to say before we all go. And I think it's important. That's why I'm actually piping up. It's the first time in a reading of poetry that some magic happened that I can't quite explain, where I managed to get into the poem and see almost from the poem, from the inside of the poem out. It's a very strange thing, and I can't find better words for it, but you allowed me to enter the poem and look at the world through the eyes of the poem. And that's never happened to me before.
Yay! Poetry is magic. Really, it is. Kim,
Wow.
do you
I just
yeah.
want to invite folks. I'm going to, I was paying such dear and close attention to everything that everyone was saying, and I never was able to look at the chat, not even once. So I will look forward to Allison's sharing that with me.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, I am going to type my Gmail address, and my website is simply my name. Okay, so I'm easy to find, and there is a contact form there, but this would allow you to just directly send me an email if you are interested in a signed copy of the first book. Not expensive, happy to sign it and send one off to you in the mail. If it's overseas, it may be more complicated, but we'll talk about it over email and figure that out. It is a gift to share it with others. So just reach out to me by email if you'd like to do it that way, and we'll figure out a way to get you a signed copy. And on my website, though, you'll get links to retail establishments if you just want to do it simply like that. But in the meantime, I'll just see you in community, everyone. Thank you for being here today. And thank you, Alison, with all my heart for this time. I really loved it.
It was absolutely an honor. And thank you, all of you, for creating the sacred space for listening and responding to this work. And I will see you next month for another Well-Versed Words. Thanks.